Let's write fractions and decimals. The first says write 3/10 as a fraction. So 3/10 as a fraction is a 3 in the numerator position and a 10 in the denominator position. That is 3/10 as a fraction. This says write 30/100ths as a fraction. So 30 over 100, 30/100ths. These fractions are equal because if I have 3/10ths, that's like saying I have 3 dimes or 30 cents. But if I have 30/100ths, that means 30 pennies out of 100. They are equivalent because they have the same value. So when learning place value for decimals, it's important to note that where you see your decimal here comes right between the ones and the tenths place. If you notice, I'm not saying tens place or hundreds or thousands. These decimal place values have THS at the end. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And the further I get away from that decimal, the least those values are worth. So if I have let's say a dime, I'm going to put just a little shape in here. So if I have maybe 2 dimes, I would put a 2 in the tenths place. The hundredths tells me a little bit less than 2 dimes is 5 hundredths or 5 pennies. If I keep on going over to the right to what's called the thousandths place, well, the value of the thousandths place is less than the value of 1 cent. You may have to use decimals like this sometimes if you're in sports or using a stopwatch or something like that. But here is how to say this decimal. 257 thousandths. Now, if I wanted to turn that directly into a fraction, let me show you how I would do so. So I have a 0, a 2 in the tenths place, a 5 in the hundredths place, and a 7 in the thousandths place. 257 thousandths turned into a fraction is 257 over 1,000. If you listen closely, you can hear that whenever you're saying the fraction, 257 thousandths, it really sounds like 257 thousandths as a decimal too. So let's practice some of that because that really helps when making fractions and decimals equivalent. Write the following as decimals. 9/10. 9/10. It shows a 9 in what place value? In the tenths place, right next to the decimal. 9/100ths as a fraction. 9/100ths as a decimal. 3/10 as a fraction. 3 tenths as a decimal. Let's move to hundredths. 11 hundredths as a fraction is written 0.11. But when I say that decimal, I say it kind of like math, proper language. And if you were to say 0.11, that is not a wrong way to say that. However, if you get in the habit of saying decimals by their place value, it automatically turns those into fractions. So if you say 11 hundredths as this decimal, it's the same as the fraction. What about 3 thousandths? That's a 3 in the thousandths place. So if we go back here and look at our place value chart, we have the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. In 5th grade, you're expected to know decimal place values to the thousandths. You probably learned tenths and hundredths in 4th grade. So we're adding a little more this year. 257 thousandths written as a decimal. 257 thousandths, or 0.257. Okay. A quick look at some fractions and decimals and pictures. What fraction does this model represent? It's 100 square, and it looks like there are 30 of them shaded in, so that fraction is 30 hundredths. What do I know about place value to write this as a decimal? I know that if I just said 30 hundredths, I'm going to put a 30 here representing 30 hundredths. What do you notice about these two? This was 30 hundredths on the last page, but now I'm seeing that 3 tenths as a decimal is shown here. But what are you noticing? Do they look like they're about the same or equivalent or equal? Because if you think they do, they most certainly are. 3 tenths and 30 hundredths are equivalent. You can write that as 0.3 or 0.30. It doesn't matter because they represent the same amount. So this picture would represent 3 dimes out of $1. This picture represents 30 pennies out of 100. Still the same amount. What fraction does this represent? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 10. That represents 6 tenths. Let's put that in a place, in a decimal place, and we end up with 0.6. Okay, I know this is a long time to watch a video, Mrs. Miller teach, but I'm going to wrap things up and let you guys show me what you know. We just took a look at how this picture represents 6 tenths. Well, what about this picture? Does it look a little the same? Could we say 60 hundredths, but also does it still equal the exact same as 6 tenths as it did on the page before? It does. So 6 tenths and 60 hundredths are equal. Let's write this as a decimal. 60 hundredths, or we could write 6 tenths because they are both equivalent. So you'll go over now and answer some questions about decimal place value. You'll find the underlying digit until, actually it's not underlined. You'll find the number and then look for the digit that's in the hundredths place. Okay, you'll do great. Have a wonderful day.